Welcome, everyone, to our first guided reading activity with George Orwell's Animal Farm. A couple reminders: you need to bring your book every single day to class unless told otherwise. If not, you have to use one of mine that has this giant pink slip of shame that says, "Chandlers, do not take this book out of my classroom." So please bring your own. Okay, with that, any marks that I make in the book, feel free to do so yourself. The first thing you need to understand is this: George Orwell is the author of Animal Farm, but that is not his real name. Let me show you. Open your book up to the first page. All right, ready? Here you go. It says, George Orwell was the pen name of Eric Blair. You might want to mark that. Comes up later on. Eric Blair is the real name of the author. It's actually a pen name, or what we call a pseudonym. Can you say that? Ready? Go. Pseudonym. A pseudonym is a name that somebody takes upon themselves for various reasons. In this case, Eric Blair used the name George Orwell to get away from, where is he? This guy. Now who's that, folks? Ready, set, go. Stalin. That's right, Joseph Stalin. If you turn the page, you can get the full story. We're only going to do a couple quick parts. Here you go. It says, Preface by Russell Baker, the guy who wrote all this about George Orwell. It says, "We were very lucky to get out of Spain alive," George Orwell wrote afterwards. He was not talking about the nearly fatal throat wound he suffered in combat during the Spanish Civil War, but about Stalin's murderous political apparatus who had gained partial control of the Spanish government by 1937. You see, Russia, or USSR, the Soviet Union, was not the only country where communism grabbed a foothold. George Orwell, Eric Blair, same guy, he was against communism, and as a result, he found himself an enemy of Joseph Stalin. Okay? So one of the reasons why he wrote this book seems to be to get back at Stalin and the individuals who set up institutions like him. Now, it could have cost him his life. He was willing to risk his life to write this book, but that's also one of the reasons why he wrote it in code. Remember that Animal Farm is an allegory. Okay? So really, it takes smarter people to figure out, and this would be one way to disguise his message and still get it across. So as we go through it, look for who these characters might be. Let's find the first page of the story. Turn. Find page 25. Okay? 25. All right. Put your finger where it says Mr. Jones. I would like you to follow along in your own book or up here. The problem is up here, my hand might get in the way and so on and so forth. Whatever marks I tell you to mark, please mark, but do so in some sort of pencil that is erasable. Okay? Here we go. Chapter 1. Mr. Jones of the Manor Farm had locked the hen houses for the night, but was too drunk to remember to shut the pop holes. With the ring of the light from his lantern dancing from side to side, he lurched. Oh, look at that word. Good word. He lurched across the yard, kicked off his boots at the back door, drew himself a last glass of beer from the barrel in the scullery, and made his way up to the bed where Mrs. Jones was already snoring. Now, first impressions, here we have our first character, Mr. Jones. A man who's supposed to be in charge of the farm, doesn't seem to take very good care of his animals, doesn't shut the pop holes, which keep them safe. He's lurching across the yard, and you saw why that was. That was because he was too drunk to do it. Now, any guesses who a farmer who doesn't take very good care of his animals might represent? All right, try and figure that out. I'm going to give you a minute or so to talk to the people around you. Who do you think Mr. Jones might represent based on who we studied? Ready? Go. All right, I know that wasn't a minute, but it's time to go on. Any guesses? If you said somebody like Nick II, you were right. We have Farmer Jones, who is very negligent, does not take care of those that he's entrusted to, and that's a lot like Nick II, Tsar Nicholas II. All right, here we go. As soon as the light in the bedroom went out, there was a stirring and a fluttering all throughout the farm buildings. Word had gone round during the day that old Major, the prized middle white boar, ooh, new character, had had a strange dream on the previous night and wished to communicate it to the other animals. It had been agreed that they should all meet in the big barn as soon as Mr. Jones was safely out of the way. Old Major, so he was called, though his name under which he had been exhibited was Wellington Beauty, was so highly regarded on the farm that everyone was quite ready to lose an hour's sleep in order to hear what he had to say. So our new character is, Mark, Old Major. Okay? Old Major, it said, is a prize middle white boar. Now, a boar is different from other pigs. He would not be killed for his meat. He would actually be the stud of pigs. He would be used to make, well, other pigs. he would be used to procreate and breed with the other pigs so they could have babies and so on and so forth. Well, you get the hang of it. Now, so this is why he might be around longer than most pigs. He might be a little more wise. But regardless, new character who represents somebody, he is the one that everybody wants to listen to. By the end of the chapter, you better try and figure out who Old Major, the prize white boar that everybody wants to listen to, represents from USSR history. All right, ready? At one end of the big barn, on a sort of raised platform, Major was already ensconced. Oh, cool word. Ensconced on his bed. So we've got a couple words here. We have lurched. That's how Jones moved across the yard. So what would lurching look like? Well, if you're intoxicated and you're clambering along in the yard, that'd be lurching, moving like a monster. Ensconced looks like Old Major was already ensconced on his bed. So he's sitting, but he's kind of raised up. All right. He was already ensconced on his bed of straw under a lantern which hung from a beam. He was 12 years old. Now, in pig years, that's a long time. And he had lately grown rather stout. Oh, there's that euphemism we talked about, stout. Stout is a happy word for what? He was a big boy. That's right. But he was still a majestic-looking pig, with a wise and benevolent appearance, in spite of the fact that his tushes had never been cut. Now, his tushes, I think, are those teeth things that come out of, like, pigs' mouths. Before long, the other animals began to arrive and make themselves comfortable after their different fashions. First came the 3 dogs. Ooh, new characters. We'll try and figure those out in a few chapters or so. The 3 dogs, Bluebell, Jessie, and Pincher. And then the pigs, who settled down in the straw immediately in front of the platform. The hens perched themselves on the windowsills. The pigeons fluttered up to the rafters. The sheep and cows lay down behind the pigs and began to chew the cud. The 2 cart horses, ooh, new characters. The 2 cart horses, Boxer and Clover, came in together, walking very slowly and settling down their vast hairy hoofs with great care, lest there should be some small animal concealed in the straw. Clover was a stout, motherly mare approaching middle life, who had never quite got her figure back after her 4th foal. Boxer was an enormous beast, nearly 18 hands high, and as strong as any 2 ordinary horses put together. A white stripe down his nose gave him a somewhat stupid appearance, and in fact he was not of first-rate intelligence. But he was universally respected for his steadiness of character and tremendous power of work. After the horses came Muriel, the white goat, and Benjamin the donkey. Benjamin was the oldest animal on the farm and the worst tempered. He seldom talked. Oh, I think I lost it. Sorry about that. He seldom talked, and when he did, it was usually to make some cynical remark. For instance, he would say that God had given him a tail to keep the flies off, but that he would sooner have had no tail and no flies. All right, let's pause. We've got a couple characters here. We've got the cart horses. The one I want you to focus on is Boxer. Okay? Now, what do we know about Boxer? I want you to go through and look for, but don't mark anything that you see about Boxer. Go. All right, here's some things hopefully that you saw. Clover, Clover, Clover. Boxer was an enormous beast, strong, stupid appearance, not of first-rate intelligence. So we have this very strong animal that does much of the work on the farm, but is not that smart. Any guesses who that might represent? Turn to somebody next to you and tell them what you think. Ready, set, go. All right, hopefully you got this one. Who was it when we studied USSR history, the rise and fall of the Soviet Union, that did most of the work that was not educated? That's right, it was the proletariats. Say it, go. Proletariats. Those who did all the work. Still very important in society, but not educated. All right, so let's get down there. Benjamin the donkey is another one. Let's go back to that. After the horses came Muriel the white goat, and Benjamin the donkey. Benjamin was the oldest animal on the farm and the worst tempered. He seldom talked, and when he did, it was usually to make some cynical remark. For instance, he would say that God had given him a tail to keep the flies off. But he would sooner have had no tail and no flies. Alone among the other animals on the farm, he never laughed. If asked why, he would say that he saw nothing to laugh at. Nevertheless, without openly admitting it, he was devoted to Boxer. The two of them usually spent their Sundays together in the small paddock beyond the orchard, grazing side by side and never speaking. Now, that is one of the mysteries we're going to try and solve by the end of the book. Who does Benjamin represent? He's been around a long time, cynical, which means he's kind of sassy in everything he says, very serious, but secretly he's very devoted or values very much Boxer. So we need to try and figure out who fits that description and who in USSR history would have been secretly devoted to the working class, the proletariat. All right, here we go. We're at the two horses. Find that? The two horses had just lain down when a brood of ducklings, so this is back in the barn when they're waiting for Old Major. So let's back up. The two horses had just lain down when a brood of ducklings, which had lost their mother, filed into the barn, cheeping feebly and wandering from side to side to find some place where they would not be trodden on. Clover made a sort of wall round them with her great foreleg, and the ducklings nestled down inside it and promptly fell asleep. At the last moment, Molly, new character, very important. Ready? At the last moment, Molly, the foolish, pretty white mare who drew Mr. Jones's trap, came mincing daintily in, chewing at a lump of sugar. She took a place near the front and began flirting her white mane, hoping to draw attention to the red ribbons it was plated with. So all we know so far is she seems kind of spoiled. She's a pretty horse, like sugar, minces in. Mincing would be like, da-da, 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 da-da. She doesn't seem to walk like a workhorse, okay? Let's keep going. Last of all came the cat, who looked round as usual for the warmest place and finally squeezed in herself in between Boxer and Clover. There she purred contentedly throughout Major's speech without listening to a single word of what he was saying. All right? Just a little longer and then you're on your own. All the animals were now present except Moses, the tame raven, who slept on a perch behind the back door. When Major saw that they had all made themselves comfortable and were waiting attentively, he cleared his throat and began. All right, that's where I'm going to stop with you. Your assignment is to read the rest. Start at the beginning of Old Major's speech, read from pages 27 to the end of chapter 1, which finishes on page 34. And you do have questions that accompany that. Feel free to make any notes. Things that you're interested in that don't come up in the questions, by all means, please bring those questions up. You can post those to the Facebook page, or you could also just talk to each other about it or bring them up tomorrow when I get back. But please, enjoy the rest of this chapter 1. Start where it says, Comrades, the first part of Old Major's speech.